We're talking to Hall of Famer Jack Ham here on the Cook and Joe Show.
Jack, may we switch to the Steelers for a moment? All eyes on T.J. Watt here. Ray Fittipaldi was on, gave him a 50-50 shot. He had the partially torn pec. He had the clean-out knee surgery. I'm wondering if you had points in your career where you had to decide, listen, do I play through this because I'm a competitor, or do I err on the side of I might be hurting my team?
Well, I think, again, different era. In my era, Joe, you just try to get back on that field any way you can. I mean, guys played after getting dinged up with a concussion. They're back in the game in the next quarter. But I think TJ's got to be very careful here because I think you're coming up with a bye week after this, right after this game.
Yep.
And that's I know it's going to be a tough football game in Philadelphia, but if I'm TJ, I got to make sure I'm 100% here before I come back because with that bye week, that gives you a whole lot more days to make sure that you are 100% and you can help him in the back half of the season.
Jack, I'm interested from a defender's perspective. Your thoughts on what you've seen from Kenny Pickett so far?
Well, I think there's been ups and downs with him. I think at times he gets the football downfield. He's got a nice arm. The idea of him running with the football also puts some pressure on other defenses. But, in pro football, you can't make those turnovers like he has made in the last couple of games. And, I know I listen to – I'm a devoted fan of your guys, and I listened to about the defense, which really got the first couple of series, and Miami was moving the football. But they settled in. And all of a sudden, they only gave up those 16 points and got the ball back in the end of the game again for the offense, and they couldn't do anything with it again. That gets frustrating at times. You can't throw those picks when you have an opportunity to win the football game at the end.
I'm curious how you look at it as, well, you were a young player too. You actually came in after Bradshaw. But when he's going through his growing pains and you see greatness there, do you willing to put up with the mistakes as a teammate? How do you look at that?
Well, I think you realize what kind of talent you have in my area in Bradshaw. In fact, they were rotating quarterbacks our Super Bowl year between Hanratty and Joe Gillum and Bradshaw. Bradshaw didn't take over until I think either midway or the third of the way through the season as our starting quarterback. But I think when you look at, the talent, you go up against that guy every day in practice, and we knew what kind of talent Terry had. So, you just feel that he's going to come around and take over the reins, and that's exactly what Terry did. Again, when he got a running game around him and some wide receivers like Swan and Stallwood.
Does a locker room become divided? Do guys share their opinions at least? Or is it just let's put our noses to the grindstone here and just play? We don't really care who our quarterback is. Yeah,
you put your nose to the grindstone. You're not making that decision on that side of the ball, and the thing you got to worry about is play as good as you can. We got Terry hurt with the 1 year, and our defense played great football for a stretch down the stretch. I think it was 76, I think. And so you get to talking about players and who should play on the other side of the ball. That is counterproductive, Joe. So for the most part, you put your head down and you just try to play better on your side of the ball. What you can do is help that football team win.
Talking to Jack Ham here. Speaking of 76, Jack Lambert was on NFL Films once, to bring him back into the conversation, after his career, saying that he thought and that the chief thought that the 1976 Steelers was the greatest Steelers team of all time. Others will say that's impossible because they didn't win it all. What is your opinion?
Well, talent-wise and the way our offense and our defense were kind of meshing together, no question. We're going for our third Super Bowl in a row there. And on a talent basis and where we were on both sides of the ball, I agree with Jack that was our best football team. But you know what, Joe? You have to finish it. You have to finish it. We lost to the Raiders out in Oakland, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl. But I think for most players, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that we thought that might have been our best football team. Injuries are always part of it, and that occurred for us that year.
Well, you lose your running backs right in Baltimore the week before, right? Franco and Rocky both went down, correct?
Yeah, we had Reggie Harrison trying to run the football against the Raiders, and that wasn't working too well. Although we did have a bunch of wide receivers, we could have gone 3 or 4 wideouts in a game like that, and I don't think they would have expected that. People weren't doing it back then. But we had talented wide receivers, and obviously Bradshaw was coming into his own. And yeah, I think it's for Lambert and myself and a lot of guys. I think we're kind of we were frustrated in the sense that we could not finish the deal on that third Super Bowl.
Jack, we want to spend a little time with you going back a little further. 50 years ago, 1972, Franco's catch, the Immaculate Reception. We're coming up to the anniversary. I don't know. I assume you're going to be are you going to come in for that game? It's Christmas Eve. Maybe the ceremony. I think there's going to be something the day before too. Are you going to be around for that?
Well, I'm not sure with family stuff and everything, but I'm sure I'll try to get to some of the stuff. Yes.
All right, take us through the play. You're on the sideline with one play left, basically. What did you see from the sideline?
Well, I'm probably the last person you want to talk to because I was on the bench cutting tape off of my shoes because I'm thinking this game is over. All right, I know you got to play to the last play, and I understand that kind of attitude. But after we gave up a cheap touchdown to Kenny Stabler and on that end run on the other side, it was a frustrating because you played great defense all the way through that football game, and they give up a crazy play like that. We have a blitz coming, and we don't contain Kenny Stabler. He goes all the way for the touchdown. So I didn't see the play. I was on the bench cutting tape off, when you tape up your shoes all the time before games. So I was cutting it off, and so I'm like every other fan out there. I heard the roar, and then everybody going onto the field down to the end zone. So I never saw one part of that, but that's the Immaculate Reception.
What did you think when you saw everybody going? And how long did it take you to realize what happened?
Well, knowing that I didn't see the play, but I saw it. Back then, as you know, Ron, the rules were different. That you could not just, two offensive players could not touch the football, and you're just waiting for the referee's call. What he's going to call here? Whether in fact that was a legal and legit catch by Franco on that collision with Tatum and Frenchie. So we're all kind of like on the sideline holding your breath until you find out. I think it was Jim Tunney was the referee. Signaled that it was a touchdown, and the other frustrating thing is Ron, we end up losing the next week to Miami, and they kept their undefeated season. So that people don't remember that part of it, but that's the following week we end up losing.
So over the years since then, I've had a couple guys tell me when they would see a Raider or see John Madden in particular that either it would be a joking situation or a very not joking situation. What was your experience, or what has it been over the years when you'd see those guys, and did you ever run into Madden and talk about it?
I have run into Madden, but a guy I've run into quite a bit about this because we played a couple Pro Bowls together is Phil Villapiano. And he does not take this well even 50 years later. And I told him one time, I said, it happened a long time ago. You gotta let it go or get therapy, one of the two. And he still to this day complains about that play in Pittsburgh. And for the Raiders, they have not let it go. Otis Sistrunk was another one who just was just so upset, and many years later. So it's good for the Raiders to have that kind of issue with them sometimes. So I'm kind of glad at the fact that if they're going to make a play like that, it's against the Oakland Raiders. But a lot of those players hung on to that thing for a long time.
Well, you weren't the only one who missed it. I believe the Chief, Art Rooney Sr., was in the elevator headed down. He'd always come down and congratulate you guys after games. I'm just curious, what was it like in that locker room after that game? Disbelief? I mean, what was it like to know that was the first playoff game you won, right?
Exactly. 72, as you well know, Ron, was a crazy year. All of a sudden we got good. We got Franco in the running game, and I think we were like 11-3 or whatever that year. We won a lot of football games against good teams that year, and then to win that playoff game. But it was like that. It was almost disbelief. I remember I forget who it was, one of the players talking about the fact as you give out game balls, and someone said we should give it to Jack Tatum for the play that he had made. And so we kind of initially disbelief, and then we got to the point where, realized that we're going to be playing for the AFC Championship game the following week, and it took a while to sink in, Ron. It really did in that locker room.
So a follow-up story here. About 10 years ago, I talked to Craig Hanneman, defensive lineman, who admittedly lost contain on that Stabler touchdown.
Where does he live? I want to find him.
At the time, it was Salem, Oregon, but he had just climbed Mount Everest, and he talked about how he joked that it was because of him that the Immaculate Reception was possible. And I also talked to Joe Green about it, and he said, well, Craig went inside on that play, and I went outside. Thank you for telling me he climbed Mount Everest, because I can now replace that image with a new one. That would have been bad for him, right?
Oh, without a doubt. And Craig Hanneman was just a hard-nosed player for us, and wasn't a starter, was a backup. I don't know. I'm not even sure why he was in the game during that period of time, but you had one rule back there, and with the rule for today as well. When you are blitzing somebody, you do not allow them to get outside of containment. That is like rule number one in your blitz package. And I mean, Stabler, that's in the days when he could run around a little bit. He was a young guy back then in 1972. But, yeah, Craig Hanneman, Franco bails him out on that play because I thought we were going to just shut Raiders out on that day. And what a strange play for Stabler to run it in for the touchdown for those guys to take the lead.
Jack, you mentioned the game the next week against Miami. I just came back from Miami. They celebrated the 72 season. That was this past weekend down there, and they had the surviving members there. What do you remember about that game, and do you still see Larry Seipel in your sleep running down the field on the fake punt? Seipel said, that's the only thing I'm ever remembered for, the fake punt.
Ron, that game sticks in my craw more than anything else. I mean, even losing to the Raiders in that 76 year out there at Oakland for when they went to the Super Bowl. But the Miami Dolphins are coming in, and maybe we're a young football team that didn't know how good we're going to end up being, and we just started to get some success and in the playoffs. But losing that game to Miami, we have control of the game. Miami was a great team. They weren't individual players out there, but they had one great offensive line. But, yeah, the Larry Seipel run over there, where we're just, taking control of the football game, that one really bothers me because you realize that game puts you into the Super Bowl. The AFC Championship game, if you win that, you go to the Super Bowl. And in my career, I had some disappointments, and that one, for me, is number one.
Jack, it's been wonderful talking to you today. We appreciate your time. I'm going to head up to Penn State tomorrow. I'll see you up there tomorrow. I made it through without calling you Lambert, which I consider it to be a very good thing. And I know everybody here is looking forward to that, the reunion, the 50th anniversary with Franco. And one last question about Franco. He's never really changed, has he? I mean, he walks by that statue, whatever it is, at the airport every day when he's flying. I mean, no one has done more, I don't think, for the community than him either. I guess what I'm trying to say is it couldn't have happened to a better guy, could it?
Without a doubt. And he was always taught up here at Kent State, when the ball's in the air, to go to the football. That was preached in here with Joe so much on the practice field. But to have that celebration for the Immaculate Reception is one thing, but I think also the fact of if you're going to retire a number, I think Franco Harris is so well deserved that I think you're right about the fact people ask him to do so many things in the community. He never says no. He is that type of guy, and he's been that quiet kind of guy since he was a freshman at Penn State when I first met him, and he's the same guy today after all the success he has. He's just a class act.
Jack, as we were talking, I was reading a story of your Hall of Fame class in 1988. I didn't realize you went in with Ditka, Fred Biletnikoff, and Alan Page. That must have been an interesting weekend, yes?
Oh, without a doubt. And, in fact, if you just brought up that Fred was complaining then about the Immaculate Reception as well. And I'm glad he didn't put it in his Hall of Fame speech. But, yeah, it was a good group. and I got a chance to spend some time with Mike Ditka, who's just a great guy to be around. So it was a fun time. You spent the entire week up there at Canton, and I couldn't have gone in with three classier guys.
Well, they say, you talk about Biletnikoff. Madden was the one that, to his grave, was moaning and complaining about it, right? He never got over it.
Well, I think he and Noel had a rivalry or an edge to each other. Those two guys, I don't think they ever went to dinner with each other. So it was always a problem there between Madden and Noel, and that just added the fuel to the fire.
Jack, stay well. I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and thank you very much. We really appreciate your time.
All right, guys, take care.